Hello everyone, you're welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Fulu and this is Get Candid with Fulu, where we talk about everyday life issues. I bring in my personal opinion and that of any invited guests on the show. On today's episode, I know most of my episodes kind of pander towards the women, but this one is going to pander towards the men a little bit. So it's really about DNA tests when a child is born. So here's the thing, I've seen a lot of videos. I mean, one show that I enjoy watching on YouTube is Paternity Court. I generally enjoy court shows, or, you know, I just really enjoy it. But Paternity Court, there's one with, I believe it's old, with Judge Lauren Lake. I really enjoy watching it. And, you know, sometimes it's the men that bring the women or the children onto the show and want to prove that they're not their fathers. Sometimes it's the children, because I've watched one where a grown-up child, actually in her 30s, brought her father to the show because the father was insinuating that he was not her real father. So just to do the paternity court. Now, I mean, I'm not sure how that works, whether they just couldn't go and do the DNA, why they wouldn't go and just do the DNA rather than air their dirty laundry in public. But hey, whatever reason they choose to do it at the court is up to them. But more importantly, I've seen where the fathers bring the mothers of their children to court to confirm whether or not it's their children. And sometimes, you know, when they find out that these children are not theirs, the disappointment, you know, you can see how shattered they are sometimes. Sometimes they're happy, maybe because they really didn't want to be. But sometimes, especially when they've already started taking care of the children like theirs, they feel like they already have this bond. And then they realize that these children are not theirs. You know, the devastation that you can see is, I think it's heart-wrenching. And so it leads me to the point that, should DNA tests be done? Like, should people be ordered to do DNA tests at birth? I don't think it's a bad idea. And here's why. Hear me out. Here's why. I think that, you know, because this even happens in marriage situations, right? Where they're already married, and for some reason the woman stepped out and had children for somebody else. And, you know, this man has been taking care of this child like theirs for 30, 40, 50 years. And then in their old age, they come to find out that these children are not theirs. Where do they start from? They're not theirs biologically. So, I mean, I've seen cases where the children are like, well, this is my father. They're the ones that have taken, this is the person I know as my father. So I really don't care who else, you know, is my biological father. But this is the person I know as my father. And this is the person that's going to continue to be my father, which is great, which is very noble, because ideally that really is their father. But on the father's side, you know, I think that it has the ability to destroy anybody. And yes, because I know people, I mean, even some of my close family members have a completely different opinion about this. And I know, I mean, I've spoken to one of my closest family member who believes that, you know, until there's a way to find out if a man is stepping out too, you know, then there's nothing like that. Whatever is good for the goose is good for the gander. And I agree, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And her own argument is the fact that, you know, men too, sometimes the men go and they have children elsewhere and the woman has no idea, and then they are dead. Or later in life is when the woman then finds out and they bring one child. You know, all these Yoruba movies where they say, meaning that your possession doesn't double or doesn't multiply and you get mad. You know, all that crap talk. I mean, I see it a lot in Yoruba movies. So, you know, and then they come and they start telling you all this crap about how, you know, your husband has children. So yes, I know that men also are very unfaithful in a lot of ways. But in this instance, you know, in their own way, in their own unfaithfulness, Yes, it impacts you, but it's not you. Well, I guess. So yes, you do feel like, okay, your children are the only children, or you feel like you feel a different way. You feel like you have a different, I guess, a different entitlement. And I use that in air quotes because it's very vague, as opposed to now knowing that, okay, there are many of you, or there's another wife somewhere, and things like that. But I think that I think a man taking care of a child that is not theirs and finding out later that this child is not theirs, somebody that they have already been, they believe that it's their child, I think that, in my own opinion, is more grave than a man having children outside. I do. I mean, I don't subscribe to it. I think it is wrong because it also has the ability and the capacity to destroy their spouse or their wife. It does. So please note that I am very much against any form of infidelity. So I'm not condoning it. I'm not endorsing it in any way, shape, or form. Right now, I'm just talking about the fact that I think there should be some way of verifying if a baby is the father's own before proceeding. I truly do. I mean, sometimes you can already tell in how the child looks. You can already tell, well, you know how they will say, did this one vomit, shop, or learning? So sometimes you can tell even without a DNA test. It's so obvious because they look like them. But sometimes when they don't, I think it's okay. It's okay to request a DNA test. I think so. Even in the confines of marriage, I don't think that any woman should be mad that a man is requesting for a DNA test. We have a family friend who, before he got married, had this girlfriend, and they supposedly had a child together. He had this daughter with her, and they had been going on. I think this child must have been 3 or 4 years old before something happened. And I think the lady then said something to him and said, well, she's not yours. But later she tried to retrace her steps and tried to come back from there. But of course, you have already sowed the seed of doubt. So he insisted that he wanted to do a DNA. And after 4 years, found out that that child was not his. He was very, very devastated. I mean, till now, the child must be in her 30s, I think now. And he still has a relationship with her. But he was really, really pained, So since that incident, when he got married, all of his children, he told his wife, I'm sorry, I've been beaten before. So it's important that I have a DNA test for all my children. And the wife understood. Honestly, if you're not doing anything that's, if you are okay. I know it does seem like, he doesn't trust me, but I think that if you have no reason for the man to doubt you, you should be okay with him wanting to have a DNA test because of everything that we're seeing now, all the things that are happening. People are committing suicide because they realize that the person that they've been taking care of, the child that they thought was theirs, apparently is not theirs. It's for somebody else. So yeah, that's my candid opinion on it. I think that DNA tests should be mandated. I think that DNA tests should be done. But if a man doesn't want to, if he chooses not to, then that's fine. But I don't think we as women should be mad when a man says, you know what, even if we're married, when a man says, you know what, I do want to have a DNA test for this child. I would like to have a DNA test for this child. We should be okay with it. Sure, go ahead, let's do it. And at least no doubts will be there. That's done. Here, I know that, if you sign the birth certificate, you have accepted the fact that the child is yours. So here, if you're having a child here, then make sure that you do the DNA test before you sign any birth certificates, because I think that you have a certain number of days where you can then go back and say, you know what, no. So make sure that you do that so that there's no doubts later in future. You're sure that you know that this child, beyond any reasonable doubt, is mine. And so everything I'm doing is for my own child, And all these doubts that men come up with, all these statements that they come up with, like it's the woman that knows who the real father of the child is and things like that, very insulting statements that they come with. If you've already done the DNA at the very beginning. Then a man cannot open his mouth and spit that kind of nonsense to you, you know, because men generally, for some reason, they have a lack of trust. I think most men have a lack of trust for women. They do, because, you know, the kind of statements that come out, you know, I watch it in movies. I watch a lot of Nigerian Yoruba movies. You know, the kind of statements that come out is like, come on, have some regard, have some respect for women. And that's why a man, which is a topic for another discussion, you know, all this next of kin. Because I used to work in a bank in Nigeria. I've mentioned that before. I used to work in a bank in Nigeria, and I saw many men use their siblings as their next of kin. That's going to be another topic entirely that we'll talk about, you know, next of kin issues. But yeah, I mean, that's it for me on today's episode of Get Candid with Folu, talking about DNA tests when children are born, so that there are no doubts. Everybody knows whose child it is. I mean, sometimes the women too don't know. Unfortunately, that happens, and they get put out of their own misery, right? You know who exactly this child is for, and that way everybody is clear. Especially if the child is looking like you, and you cannot really say who go owns the child. So yes, let's try and be cooperative. Let's be okay. Let's be understanding when the man says that he wants to do a DNA test for the children. Let's not take it as a slight on us, because there have been too many stories where later in future you find that out. So that's it from me on today's episode of Get Candid with Folu. Please send me your emails at my email address, getcandidwithfolu@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram, Get Candid with Folu. Like, subscribe, and share. Till next time.